Have you ever noticed while playing a video game that you inevitably will get to a certain point in the process when you come across a moment where you suddenly have to put the controller down and relinquish your player agency, or at least get the inclination to start spamming buttons to make the game work again? You have to watch an unskippable cutscene, some dialogue that goes on far too long, a tutorial section that you've already seen, a long elevator ride without any music. This is called a loading screen. I remember back when you could just skip these cutscenes with the press of a button. I almost forgot they were even there. And yes, a lot of games today still have this feature, but it's gotten slower over the years. Now you need to hold down a button to skip, or press it twice for confirmation that you're tired of seeing this shit for the 10th time. You're familiar with the exposition, you don't need to see it again, just let me skip to the part where I get to spend the alone time with the waifus already. The point that I'm trying to make is, the way that games have evolved, I should really say devolved, is to include padding for the sake of making games feel bigger than they really are. And to compensate for this and all the shiny graphics that inflate the file sizes, developers have found ways to trick you into thinking that the game, I don't know, was captured all in one take, and that there are actually no loading screens to sit through, but instead you have tunnels to crawl through, or you have to run in circles until the next teleporter pops up. It may sound controversial and maybe even stupid at first, but I really do personally prefer the good old days when developers weren't being pretentious, when they were not trying to trick us. When loading screens were not hidden, they were just little chill pause screens that gave you a moment to take a breather and maybe look at some cool backgrounds or mash buttons while you wait. You see, even a loading screen can be creative, and that's why I prefer an actual unambiguous loading screen to a hidden loading screen, where you have to sit through dialogue and nonsense. It's because this form of loading screen gives you cognitive dissonance. You've been brought to a screeching halt upon which you have to now sit and wait for the scene to play out. Whereas in most old games you can just skip the cutscene outright and get back to the races. At least when you know a loading screen is coming, you're prepared for it and you know that there's nothing you can do about it except take a deep breath and relax. But now you're holding your breath, pacing around, spamming buttons out of frustration and out of habit, because you used to be able to skip the scene completely, or at least press fast forward through the talking parts that no one cares about. You don't need to read this unless you're really interested, then you maybe should pay attention. You see, back in the PlayStation 2 version of Devil May Cry 3, you would get maybe a 5 to 10 second load screen at the start and end of a mission, or, before a boss fight when the cutscenes would begin to play. This is actually my favorite loading screen of all time, since you could mash the square and triangle buttons during it to see the bullet holes appear on the screen and the sword slash marks, kind of how like the animation happens at the end of the mission clear screen, where Dante just destroys the whole fucking thing. Of course, this is only available really in full on the PlayStation 2 version, as modern hardware has made the miniature load screens almost obsolete. But it's still an awesome detail from a bygone era where games were maybe slower to load, but really faster in actuality due to the simplicity of the design. Another closely related example is Bayonetta, where during a load screen you actually get to just teleport to the practice room where you can assume full control of Bayonetta during the break. You can act out all of her moves during this for as long as it lasts. So even during this load screen, you still get full player agency restored to you. Sometimes a load screen is just a backdrop, like the ones in Elden Ring when you transition from one faraway location to the next. Imagine playing this game blind and then you see this location pop up during a load, not knowing what's in store when you get there, but having your curiosity on full alert. Perhaps the coolest example that I've yet to mention, or at least the prettiest example, would be from essentially any Atlas load screen. I know it might be cheating to bring up the Atlas UI acumen, but it's also the Atlas creativity on display that makes it count. Consider the loads, or more accurately the transition screens on something like Persona 5, where you see the silhouettes mixed with the cameo appearances from the main supporting cast in the corner of the screen. When you travel across Tokyo from one transit line to the next, you see the Shibuya skyline in the backdrop, with plenty of detail in the foreground from the passengers assuming their natural positions as they would if they were crammed on a train, waiting. These loads only last briefly, but they're impactful as a way to convey the atmosphere and the realism of the world. Or in Catherine Full Body, which is a puzzle game that takes up no more than 15 to 20 gigabytes, you get pretty pink title cards with decorations and faux quotes attributed to like Einstein and shit about love and philosophy. These are more enjoyable than they are irritating, because it's never a good thing to have to drop your controller in the middle of a game session. But if you have to take a moment's rest, it should be to look at something important that keeps your mind on track. That's what a lot of load screens would do by injecting clues and hints for a keen eye to scan while waiting. This is how you show detail without having to waste anyone's time. This is how you keep people immersed, even when you have to do the boring loading screen. It's so much more creative than an endless elevator ride or a cutscene that you just can't button mash away. If there's going to be downtime while playing a game, then you need to make it count in the coolest of ways. Don't use it as an excuse to lie to us and be obnoxious by making me stare at Kratos' bald head in the carriage ride for 25 seconds. Bring back the art of the loading screen, if we're going to be using those at all anymore. Somehow, some way, they do feel more natural than the hidden bugs that we're told are features.